Welcome to the Design Tribe, everyone. This is the episode where we're going to be discussing how to design in hospitality, specifically with a special guest from Art of Floors, Tom Ethridge and Katie Stewart. And so if you guys are kind of dealing with this whole coronavirus thing right now, we just wanted to say that, we feel you, we have empathy, and we're pretty lucky that we're able to kind of be able to work from our computers, but we are thinking about all of you that are not able to do that. But for this episode, we kind of want to distract you from all the craziness. So we'll dive into designing in hospitality. And so the first question is for both of you, so feel free to kind of chime in. But from a design standpoint, how is hospitality really different from other industries, would you say?
Okay. Katie, do you want to take it first, or do you want me?
Sure. From a designer point of view, I would say that one of the things that is a little bit different from working in residential or some other areas is that the functionality and the construction of the product is so much, almost like one of the most important pieces you start with, rather than just working up to just the design. With hospitality, you have to really find products that's going to be able to use in high traffic, when cleaning of rooms, the way that the wear and tear of these are so much different than what just goes into your home. So the construction comes into play way more. And so you're that's one reason why we've locked down so many great construction in Art of Floors. You look at sometimes the construction and then the design, which is a little bit different. The way that a designer comes to you with a direction of what you want, you might think of, well, what construction is going to go better in this situation? What construction is going to work with this design, but then also be held up? Is it, for high traffic of a lobby, from a lobby to a hotel room? So that's a little bit different. I would say it's probably one of the first big differences that as a designer we really see. Also, sizing is very different. We're working with all different sizes. From large sizes to weird shapes, and it's not just about repeating something out or blowing something up just to fit a large size. It's a lot about how those things lay out, because you're not just dealing with a square, you're dealing with the whole lobby and the whole space. And a lot of times designs work across the whole space and work together through the space. And so you're looking at some different ways of designing than just a normal repeat pattern.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Tom, what would you say, or do you have anything to add on to that? Just kind of how hospitality is different from maybe other industries?
Yeah, Katie's absolutely right. You've got to get the construction right. That's the biggest thing. I mean, the designers that we work with on projects, they always want, the colors to be perfect, of course, the design to be right. The hotel owners want everything to be Instagrammable now. I mean, it's got to be, something just really cool, over the top. But we've got to protect them and make sure that the construction that the rug's made in is appropriate, especially when you're talking about lobby spaces where 10,000 people will be walking across that. And, the owner would be pretty upset if it didn't hold up in 6 months. So, we're trying to build things that are basically bulletproof. And one of the things that we talk about is you can take just about any hospitality product and put it in your home in a residential setting, but you can't really just take a residential product, any residential rug or any other product, and put it in a hospitality setting, because of just those demands with the traffic and the abuse and the wear and tear that these things get. So I'd say that that's the number one thing. And the constructions that we offer, since we only do hospitality, we specialize in hospitality, a lot of times the designer will ask, is this hospitality grade? And they never have to worry about that when they work with us, because we always, everything that we're doing is centered around hospitality for the most part.
Gotcha. Well, that's good to hear. So in terms of hospitality, then you guys kind of just, make sure that, like you said, it's bulletproof, not just in a hotel, but also maybe in a law office or something like that might have a lower traffic. But again, it's not going to be a problem if you have lower traffic, for example.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And when I say, we're doing mostly hospitality, you're exactly right. We're doing law offices and we're doing libraries and a lot of other things, not just hotels. A lot of people think of hospitality, it's like hotels is the first thing that comes to mind, but it does cover a lot of other property types too. So, yeah.
Gotcha. So Tom, how did the idea for Art of Floors get started, and kind of what role does creativity play at Art of Floors?
Okay. I got into the hospitality business about 20 years ago. The first company I ever started, we made cotton bath rugs for hotels. I mean, nothing's sexier than that, right? Hotel bath mats. But a few years ago, I went to I went to work for a company that is primarily a residential furnishings company. And my role was to bring hospitality to this company. But at the end of the day, they were still a residential company, and hospitality was a very small portion of their overall business. So, the wheels were always turning. What if, what would it be like to do this, specifically area rugs, in a capacity where this is really what we do? This is what we specialize in. And that, I guess, is where the idea sort of formulated. And a couple of years ago, we got an opportunity to do a project for a hotel in Tacoma, Washington called Murano. And it was interesting because the designer was in San Francisco and the property was in Tacoma, Washington. Katie was in Baltimore. I'm in Georgia. We did this. This was a Providence Hotels property. So purchasing was in New York. Factory was in India. And it was kind of like this grand experiment. Can we pull this off, and really cool lobby rugs? So that was the first project that we ever took a stab at and pulled it off all but seamlessly. And then that's when I said, we can really do this. We can make this happen. And we've had a lot of luck and been very fortunate since then. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. So do you think that since you had so much success with the first project that way, that you'll just always be kind of a working remote company, or do you ever plan on having kind of an office?
Well, I think we can. I think we can continue to expand exponentially just by, we can add more designers who, obviously, we have no problem working remotely. Katie and I share a lot of things by CAD or, by phone or by, we always work remotely. We can continue to add new design people to that formula. We have really no limitations on production. Most of our production is overseas, and we partner with factories that specialize in different constructions. So for instance, if it's a project that requires a hand-knotted, a very high-end hand-knotted construction, we have one resource for that, hand-tufted another resource for that. We work with the best in the world. And so there's no limitations in terms of production. So, I think it's, and it helps in times like this for sure. So
exactly. Yeah. It doesn't disrupt your business at all.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's pretty awesome. Okay. So Katie, what are some design styles that hospitality clients are kind of drawn to, and why do you think that is?
Well, with hospitality, you see such a large range of styles because they're, with one designer could have multiple projects that might come with us with questions or, with looking at different things, and they're totally different because they're designing for one, like he said, they're all over. The hotel could be, they might be designing, a design house in Chicago or something, and they're designing one location up, a seaside, and then one's like a lodge or something. So we see a really wide range, and a lot of them are going to be based on kind of what the hotels feel and look. But what we're kind of seeing more and more is how the hotels start to really take from the place that they're in, bringing like what's around them inside, which we see that a lot in our trends coming up, and across the board we see a lot of a range of colors from soft color, beige, a lot of the kind of the same things that we see across the board in residential, but just used a little bit differently throughout the hotels. We've also seen a big pull, I feel like, of texture. A lot of texture, which is interesting. Designers wanting texture in hospitality, which is kind of not something we see as often because texture causes, bumps, harder to clean, or but we've seen some designers wanting to have this texture but still keep it no trip and all the same functionality. And so we have had to think about like what other ways we can bring that look into it design wise, and either do a larger knot and a knotted rug to give it to that kind of like feel. Is it a woven that we can try to keep really do it that it won't have like a tripping, have the no curved edges? Is it through a hard twist? We bringing in this type of look, but keeping it still the functionality and the hospitality grade, bulletproof type of construction. But we have seen a lot more of that. I think it's a lot of bringing this homey feel inside of the hotels, but we see across the board all different styles and colors, from a arts and crafts rug for like a lodge, and then you turn around and you see like a totally super artistic paintbrush, soft muted colored type rug. So you do see a range of designs across the board from different projects, which is exciting. It you don't really get stuck with one type of look. Like you get to do, from a designer point of view, you get to do all different types of things, which is really exciting. Each project is a whole new look and a design that you get to work with, which is really exciting.
That is exciting. It sounds like you would never get bored. I don't have a history of working in hospitality, but the impression that I get is almost what you said is kind of the more sophisticated, kind of soft, neutral, kind of quiet looks. Everything from that to something that could be potentially like a little bit wild because, it is a very specific designer's vision versus something that people have to go home and live with for the next 10 years. Does that kind of
we see
make sense?
We've been working on and I'm sure we'll talk more about this, our trend book, and we just, looking and more at hotels across, domestically and internationally, and seeing what they bring in, and you do see the soft, more, sometimes you see the soft and the muted and the clean cuts and the very kind of modern, but then you also see these really eclectic and folky and kind of fun, kind of wowing, like they can wow you. And it's a little bit different in a space of a hotel. You're thinking about if you're making, let's say, like a 50-foot rug, that's going to go into a huge, like a lobby space. That the way you do design that is so different than thinking about like just a rug in a living room with all the other things around it. And you can really do some really fun things with those designs. You can really wow people with it. And it's really amazing once we see the rugs into the space and it comes all together, which can be so many months after the install day, after we first do the design, to finally see the whole space and what the rug that we did with all the other pieces together, how it all comes together is it's so exciting when you finally see those install shots.
I bet. Okay, so this question is for both of you, but if a designer would like to work in the hospitality industry, kind of since you were talking about how the styles have such a broad range, what are some essential things you might look for in a portfolio if you were going to hire, let's say, like an entry-level designer, or even someone who's maybe been working for a few years but maybe outside of hospitality? Like, what would you want to see specifically in hospitality in a portfolio?
You want me to take that first, Katie?
Sure, go ahead.
All right. They have to be able to read people's minds. No, I say that in seriousness because on these projects, we're working with another designer who is responsible for that project and working with who is working for the hotel owner ultimately, or working for a brand. And they usually have an idea in their mind of what they're looking for, but they don't always just have art to just hand over to us. A lot of times they'll send inspiration images And so it's our job to interpret what it is that they're really after. And sometimes those can be some pretty obscure photos and things that they'll, and sketches and things that they'll see. So the thing that I would say that one of the things you look for in a portfolio is just somebody who isn't necessarily locked into one style or one theme, and that's the only thing that they can do. I mean, they've got to have some versatility and be able to work well with other designers, because again, it's easy for us to say, hey, this is how I would do it. But you've got to take into consideration that not only are you working for somebody else, but they are working for somebody else too. So.
Gotcha.
Absolutely. Like the more time you take to go back and forth, trying to get, it's the longer time, these are time sensitive a lot of times with install dates and hotels, and you're trying to get the sampling out there. And so definitely trying to understand and from a designer point of view, if they show you a rug and they're like, we like this kind of look, understanding why they like that look. It might not be the actual design. It might be that it's hand drawn and the lines being a little wavy, making it that antique look. And it might not actually be the exact design. So understanding what the feel they're trying to get and doing all that as best as possible without going back and forth, is definitely helpful. I would say also, not just knowledge, not just the skill of just designing, like creating an illustration or making a piece of art. It definitely product information, understanding whatever product you're talking about. Maybe we're not talking about rugs, it could be somewhat pillows or lighting within hospitality, but knowing a little bit about the product, I think, is definitely important, because it all goes back to understanding what the client needs. And it's not just drawing out the CAD to look well, but it's understanding, well, this CAD's gonna, this is going on this construction, and this is what they need for the space. And so understanding, it's not just about sitting down and drawing, it's also understanding where that application is going and being translated digitally for that. So,
yeah, I definitely see what you're saying. I think for all the designers out there, though, if they were to come and present, their portfolio to you, I think sometimes for designers, they're like, well, even if I have, logos, for example, it shows that I can design, but that might not translate to textiles and hospitality, for example. So
yeah,
I guess what I'm trying to say is if you opened their portfolio book, what would you want to see? What would make you feel super confident in this designer? Would you need to see actual rug designs, your specific product? Would you want to see more non-objective designs, textural things, things like that?
If someone came to me to show me, seeing the story of how they came to that design, okay, you can draw this, I see that, but let me see how you got there. Let me see what you started with. If it's logo, if they don't have, logos, okay, well, what you did logos for a company, what ideas did they give you, and how did you get to this point? Let me see how you worked with your client. Don't just show me the final piece. Mm-hmm. Show me the mood board or just the story, the inspiration, the full story of how you got there, so I can see how your mind translates to
kind of show the creative thinking, the process.
Yeah, the creative thinking process of it. Because that's definitely important, because like you said, sometimes we get hardly any direction on what we need, and translating that to the final piece, and reading minds in a way is important. And so seeing that full circle piece, from the inspiration to the final piece, would be definitely a great way to show your portfolio.
Yeah, I think I think you could teach just about anybody the specifics of hospitality rugs, gotcha. Or any hospitality product. But I think what what we would want to see in a portfolio would be just that untapped creative potential, just thinking outside of the box. I mean, a lot of times that's what this requires. It requires coming with a solution that, because there may be a budgetary constraint on what they want to do, and you've got to like be a creative thinker and be able to translate a design. Sometimes, for instance, we may have a really complex design that the construction or the size limitations for a particular rug won't allow you to do it as detailed, but you still got to be able to express that same general look and feel, just maybe at a much, much smaller scale. So that's important.
Gotcha. Okay, so this question is for Katie. So what are some up and coming trends that you see coming more specifically into the hospitality segment, and how do you do your trend research?
This is exciting because we're actually currently been talking a lot about this, working on trends for 2020. It's definitely different in trend researching than what I've done in the past, working in residential work than hospitality work. It's going a lot to looking to see what's out there and what is in hotels currently, of course, and what we're seeing across the board with different hotels or other installations. And then it's also being really having a good conversation with all of yours. We talk a lot with our sales reps. What are they seeing? Because they're sitting down and talking to designers regularly. They have other lines too, that's hospitality. What are they seeing? So we talk a lot with them about what colors, what other design jobs, what we're seeing out there. And there's been some really exciting things that we are working on within our trend, our 2020 trends. And like I kind of talked about before, we see a lot going on right now is like people bringing nature inside, bringing outside in, is what, and it can be in all different forms. It can be from a beachside resort to something more jungle-esque, but bringing, like, it's not just bringing that more authentic experience by going there and doing things outside, but they're bringing that inside, and the installations and the way that the architecture is just astoundingly beautiful, and the way that they're bringing, it's not just bringing plants in, it's the different materials that they're using, the way that the architecture is designed. So we're seeing a lot more of that, and then the rugs and the colors, you're seeing a lot more of warmer colors warming up the more modern, cool kind of looks that we've had in the past. The really cool, modern, very empty, and filling that space with a little bit more warmth, where we see, and that could be with the colors with rug colors or paint colors, but also like just bringing in like driftwood into spaces, and like the different aspects of the furniture that you see across the space that they're designing within. And then that also brings in, we see a lot of that home away from home type feel, which is something that we've been talking about a lot, is making you feel at home where you are. And that really eclectic kind of feel of different aspects of the hotel with the town around them. And it can change from place to place to place, but it always is rich in color and rich in life in a way. It's so you feel like you're home, although you're not. And we've seen a lot more of that, a lot of like these different pattern on pattern on pattern, which is a little bit different than what you see in residential. Definitely, I feel like it doesn't always work well when you see pattern on pattern on pattern, but these spaces that we're seeing more and more of it from, and when you say pattern on pattern, it's not just like fabric patterns. It can be from like the marble and the tile in the room and the carpet and the rug. There's so many different textures that go on in the space, and we're seeing a lot of that more mix where you regularly wouldn't see it, and it's really kind of exciting how they meld together. So there's a lot of exciting trends that we're seeing in hospitality, and we've been actually working on our trends for 2020, getting these together and finding them out. And so
I love doing trend research. It's always inspiring.
Well, we're a little lucky because the projects that are coming to us right now, they won't deliver to the property until October, November, December of this year. So when Katie says 2020, really we're talking 2021, because we work so far out. And then by the time they're actually installed in the space or in the rooms, and then the marketing photos are done, and the photos end up on the websites and things, the things that we're working on right now, you'll actually start to see next year. So it's always interesting too, because we're working on projects from a lot of different areas of the country. So when you start seeing these themes that, a designer in Philadelphia and a designer in San Diego, California have basically the same color palette, then, you've got something. And one of the things that we're finding is the beiges, the grays are still very important. But a lot of blues, a lot of greens that will make their way in next year. And,
the greens are interesting. I feel like that's definitely new. Like, whereas blues and grays have kind of, I don't know about hospitality, but in residential for sure, that's been popular for a while. And I was going to ask, of course, gray is still going to be probably popular, but do you see the gray kind of being phased out a little bit, or starting to be, like you mentioned, the more warm colors, Katie?
We definitely have, we have gray. Grays is definitely something we continue, but I feel like we see more of the warmer grays, not the cooler.
More taupes.
Definitely warmer grays, and they're even paired sometimes with some soft beiges.
Gotcha.
Not, the beiges aren't too yellow. They're still, on the cooler side, but it's like there is that kind of going towards. And I agree with the greens. Turquoise was there for a bit, and we still see some turquoise, and we see some blushes, and you do see some blushes and rusts that come in as a corresponding color, and navies and blues. But it is interesting to see green, like actually just green. It all comes back to that nature. That bringing that outside inside. You get the greens of all different color, which is exciting to see.
Especially now with everybody spending so much time inside right now, that's going to become a bigger thing that bringing outside in. So
that is so true. Oh my gosh, yes. I a couple of years ago, for those of you who are watching, I used to design rugs as well, but more for the residential side, and I kept trying to bring in the greens, especially for outdoor rugs, and my bosses were just like so scared of it. They were like, oh no, like no one's going to buy this. And it probably was a little too early, but I'm glad to see it's finally coming around.
Well, definitely too. When we were
not now.
Picking the right greens. It's like, it is coming from working in residential as well. Cause I know that, I worked back in residential a few years ago too. It is kind of like, oh, I'm picking out greens, but is this green too olive, that olive color, or is this green too moss, or is this green? It kind of, when you get to the greens, you do get a little bit like, oh, turquoise, that's safe, or like navy, that's safe,
right? Or celadon is like, even that was probably a little too much for them at the time, but it's probably quiet enough.
Pick out the greens, but they really. I don't know. That's one of my favorite palettes that we came out with with our trends. I think like the greens and the beige and the grays all working together really nicely.
Okay, so this next question is also for Katie. What types of software do designers need to know to be able to work in hospitality, or would you say it's kind of different for every company?
I would say many companies have their own. They actually have their own proprietary, like their own software that you'll have to learn. I think basic knowledge of Illustrator and Photoshop is where you can work from. There's Texel, which is great. That works with Axmixer and that kind of like large format. But you don't need, I think, to entry into this, you don't need to have that knowledge. If you go into a company, they'll train you with whatever category that they have. Or if you're trying to design something and sell like licensee wise, you don't need to have that type of programming. I think that just having the basic underlying of like Illustrator and Photoshop, having clear understanding of repeats and clear understanding of like, vectors and layouts and gridding out things like that, then you're pretty. That's a good basis.
Yeah, I get that question a lot online just from people wanting to know, and I would say the exact same thing, at least from my experience. Photoshop and Illustrator really translate well if you do need to learn another program, but companies know that you're not necessarily learning textile in college or whatever. So they're fine to train you on that. But yeah, all right. Okay, the next question is for Tom. And so how do handmade goods play a role in hospitality, especially with the bulletproof quality that you were talking about? And do you see a rise in demand for handmade products, or are you just working with a specific niche that is more geared towards handmade?
A lot of it comes down to budget, and believe it or not, we do have a wide range of products that fit a wide range of price points. So, which is helpful. We do a lot of work at the upper end, the boutique type properties, versus a lot of the cookie cutter chains. A lot of times, the moderately priced properties are looking to hit tight budgets. And so sometimes handmade is a little out of their reach, and they have to go with standard, carpets and rugs and things like that are more machine made and less handmade. But we do a pretty good job of value engineering, even when it comes to handmade products. And so I hope to see more of it. Again, I think there's kind of a misperception out there that, we can't afford handmade, but that's not always the case. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, I love seeing more handmade products, and just that, you're employing people, even if it's overseas, rather than just running a machine. Okay, well, Tom, do you also see Art of Floors expanding into other categories, or would you ever offer pillows or upholstery fabrics or any other type of products? Your name is Art of Floors, so I was curious.
I didn't really think about it when we named the company. Yeah, we kind of pigeonholed ourselves, didn't we? No, it's funny. We started this to do hospitality rugs, and our goal is to be the very best in the world at that. And I would rather be great at one thing than be mediocre at a lot of different things. Gotcha. And so right now, that really is our focus. Now, if one day we wake up and I say we are the undisputed heavyweight champs of this, and nobody is even close to us, and we're a little bored, so let's explore some other product categories. Or who knows? Sometimes our design customers will challenge us and say, "Hey, I'm looking for XYZ and I can't find it anywhere else. Can you help with this?" And certainly we're not just going to say, no, it's not a rug. And so, no, absolutely not. But in terms of like a strategic direction, I think right now we're just going to focus on being the very, 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 very best at this.
So this is kind of another question that I just thought of and didn't prepare you with, but
perfect.
In that realm, it made me think of, are you guys doing a lot of like new product development within hospitality as well, like in terms of the construction, or are you kind of just working with, okay, these are the things that are bulletproof, so we're going to stick with what we know? Or
no, we are absolutely trying to push the envelope in terms of fibers and densities and things like that. I'll give you a perfect example. Viscose is a fiber that is used a lot in residential, but it's not a great fiber for hospitality constructions. It's it's got that high sheen that viscose has, that high sheen, kind of faux silk kind of thing. But it sheds, it stains it. So we've been using a lot of tinsel, which is a more durable, same kind of sheen, but a lot more durable fiber. That's one thing. And as simple as it may sound, Katie hit on it earlier, just even different textures and different pile heights and combinations of cuts, loops, piles, things like that, pile heights and things like that, just to introduce things that people really haven't seen. At least on a regular basis, you can get some really cool three-dimensional looks, even in handmade products. So we challenge our partners even to bring new constructions to us when they develop something new, to let us give some input and have some ownership in that too. So
awesome. Well, that's really exciting. Congrats on Art of Floors and everything. And Katie, I have one more question for you, because we do have so many listeners and viewers that are designers. And so I'd love for you to just kind of walk us through your career as a designer, because you have such an interesting story and you definitely made some major sacrifices, like being long distance from your now husband for quite a while. And so I kind of wanted you to just give advice to designers that maybe are struggling to get a job or struggling to find that great opportunity. And so, yeah, just walk us through kind of your story as in your career and then give some advice to.
So my thing is, I never expected to go into home decor. You know, I spent like 6 months abroad doing tailoring in Germany abroad during my schooling, like costume, and I thought textile design was going to be in fashion based, you know. But as a, you know, when you graduate and you're an entry level and you're looking for that opportunity, it's all about just going for it. You know, I think that's the big thing is if it's not something that it's exactly what you thought that you want or you think that you plan to do, if it's a great opportunity to just try it and go for it and put everything into it, don't shy away. And that's pretty much what happened with me. You know, I found an opportunity far away from where my life was
Right.
at the time, but I knew that it was a great opportunity. It was totally off, you know, home decor. I wasn't even thinking about that. But it was an up and, you know, as a younger company up and coming. And I knew that if I got in there, I could, you know, learn. That's basically like, you're not stopping learning once you leave school. You're continuing constantly, even now, like continuing to learn. So, you know, I took the jump and did that. And yeah, I was living far away from my life up in, you know, hundreds of miles away, but I learned so much and I took every day learning. I took, if you're working at a company, taking the initiative isn't just about taking initiative, but I did jobs and projects people didn't want to do. You know, like if they didn't really want to, you know, that didn't seem so as glamorous or they didn't want to do that, I was like, no, I'll do it. You know, I'll do it. You know, anything could be a chance to learn. So that's kind of the attitude that I took at it from. And because of that, I feel like because of that, I had a lot more freedom and I had a lot more opportunities and I learned about some really cool, I learned about hospitality. I learned about, you know, different areas across the board. And I every day was learning more. And then there came times where you kind of had to make the harder decision to say, okay, well, am I learning anymore? Or am I just at this point kind of stagnant? I need to either jump off the boat here and find something else to continue myself learning or, you know, what are the next steps? You know, never coming complacent with constantly wanting to try and learn new things. So, you know, that's kind of the attitude I've always had. I find it really important that, I mean, I know not everyone's working in a company. Some people are freelance or different options, but working at a company, I found that really important for designers not to be in their own head, in their own office, and not all communicating with anyone else outside. You know, I felt like it's really important to understand all aspects of the business. And if you have a chance to go out and talk to a marketing or talk to a sales or talk to other jobs, or if you're working freelance and you have a client, understanding all the other things the client's thinking about, because they're thinking about sales and cost and logistics and all this other stuff. And the more you can understand about those things and kind of be a part of it when you can, will always help you down the line. So being kind of in your own space and not understanding or taking part in that. If there's a chance to work in their department, like working between departments, working with another department, learning about other departments, soaking all that up, I think is really important. And not just at one company. I think that as I left and went to different companies, their business models, how they worked, was really interesting and taught me a lot. From companies that might work in big box versus, smaller, more boutique or different things like that. How that all worked really was just a great, different way to learn. And so I think that that's really important for a designer. I know that a lot of times we really like to just kind of,
do our own. Yeah, I think that's the hardest lesson a lot of times for entry-level designers is that they want to do their own style, or they don't always understand, that you're designing for the client, or when you have to imagine what the client would want. For example, when we all work together at the wholesale company, it's, we didn't necessarily have direct contact with clients. So we had to kind of envision what would the client want. And Katie, you took up the whole construction of Machine Made at that time.
Everyone was like, oh, we want to do hand knotted. And I was like, I'll do it. Whatever, like it's not the most glamorous, it's not the most exciting, and it's not the highest price point. But I said, I'll do it, and what was really great about that was it kind of just left me to do it. And I learned so much that way.
Right.
And if you have the chance to talk to clients or to talk to sales, I think that's really important. I always found, I know shows are not that exciting sometimes for a designer, but that is the time that you're able to be closest to your client, like who's buying your design, right? And talking to them and understanding why and understanding like the costs and the price points. If you have having that understanding, I think can go so far. And it can be exciting if you approach it from an exciting point of view,
of course, yeah.
That it's another thing to tackle, a challenge of figuring out and problem solving of how to get what's needed. It can be really exciting. So sometimes I know, we don't want to, I get that too. And I get really focused when you're designing, you get really focused sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's
I think you actually inspired me because the next company I went to, it was the same type of thing where everyone wanted to work on wool tufted. And, there were already a couple of girls working on that. And so they needed somebody to do outdoor and nobody wanted to do it because the polypropylene yarns were not the best colors. And we're all vertically integrated. So but I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I kind of took that same approach and it ended up being really fun. And you do kind of end up becoming more creative when you have those weird boundaries. You figure out ways to make it look good.
And then they challenged Katie with working on hospitality with me, and everybody in the place thought that we were going to kill each other. And the funny thing is, when I decided to do Art of Floors, the first person I called was Katie. So that's so we couldn't have done it without her for sure, being there from the very beginning.
It was, and it's so different working on a collection as residential when you're thinking about your customer and how and you're creating, because after I left, the work where we worked together, I went to another company and I was the only design, I head up their entire design department and created their catalog for them. And so when you're creating a whole collection for a season, it's so you're who you're trying to design for, make sure you hit these price points and make sure you have a design at all these price points. And it's such a different thing than hospitality where you have these individual projects that come to you and you can put so much more thought into each of them and executing what the client wants. There's a lot of similarities, but there's just a lot of differences in that type of mind frame of designing for a specific client versus designing for the entire retail, who for a season.
Right. Because it's one space and you're doing it for one client versus everyone across America who might be buying this rug. Yeah.
Right. And with that, you have full collections and you have, you're trying to hit these different looks, but with the client, you're trying to hit what that one person wants. And they probably aren't very good at telling you what they want. They have, I want this, but then what is this? So,
yeah.
So it's definitely, it has its own difficulties.
Right.
But that work, through the companies that I've worked at, understanding logistics and cost and, all those things come in big play, even in this industry, across the board. If you can understand those aspects, which is what your client's also going to be worrying about, it's going to benefit you greatly.
Yeah.
So
one thing I want to mention too, I think it's important that we all collectively kind of bring up this next generation of designers and artists. And one of the things that's important to us, one of the things that we're doing is taking a portion of the proceeds or the profits from every project and donating it to art teachers, specifically to art teachers through Donors Choose. You can go to Donors Choose and see, different art teachers at underfunded schools that have cut the art programs, which just tears my heart out,
Yeah, me too.
See Katie. So
we did with Baltimore, and I when Tom sent me the email saying the project that we did funded this Baltimore one, I cried. I was like, this is, to feel that is
Well, for some of these kids in some of these schools to not have an opportunity to have an art class or it's just it's almost unthinkable. Yeah, it really is almost unthinkable. And one of my favorite projects that we participated in, there was a special needs teacher in Brooklyn, New York, who wanted to paint murals on the school walls, and we were able to support that. So yeah, it's good stuff. It's fun stuff. So
that's one of the first things that he made sure happen. I mean, I feel like when you set up Art of Floors, like that is an immediate thing that you wanted to make sure happened, that we gave back in some way.
Yeah. So.
I love that. Well, you guys are so creative, and it's awesome that, you have this mission as well. So I love talking to you guys, and I'm excited to work with you in the future. So is there anything else you want to add about Art of Floors or kind of about hospitality that we maybe didn't cover?
I can't think of anything. No, we're super excited to have the opportunity to work with you two, and appreciate you allowing us to be part of your show that you do. And so yeah.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on. It was awesome, and we'll be in touch.
All right. Thanks, Lauren.
Okay. Bye, guys.
All right, see ya.